I'm just gonna hope and pray that you can hear me because I'm literally next to the stage and I can't really do anything about it. But hello, it is the first day of 626 Night Market Arcadia, and it is also my first and only night market of this entire year. I'm gonna be honest, I was not super looking forward to this event, only because I do not like being outdoors, especially when it comes to vending and being in relatively warm weather. However, we are pretty lucky that it's actually going to be a little bit cooler this weekend compared to other night markets that I've been to. This weekend is basically going to be in the early to mid 80s, so it's not too bad. And with my location, which I'll talk about later, I am kind of in the shade, so it's not too hot and sunny. Like I said, this is my first and only night market of this year. Compared to last year, I think I did about 7 night market / outdoor events versus this year. I was supposed to do 626 Pleasanton back in late July. However, basically it was the weekend prior to Otakon and I would have had to fly early in the morning to DC the day after driving back from NorCal, and because I am situated in LA, that would have been awful because it would have been about 5 or 6 hour drive, and I didn't want to do that on top of waking up at 5 in the morning the following day. So here we are. In this vlog, I'll talk about 626 Night Market, how vending outdoors compares to vending at a convention setting, and would I do this event again as an Artist Alley vendor. So stick around and watch the rest of this video to learn about all of that. If you're not familiar with 626 Night Market, it's basically an evening to nighttime foodie market with a mostly Asian theme, and there are food and merch booths. There are 3 other main locations. Arcadia is one of them, which I'll talk about later. This event is from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., which is pretty reasonable compared to the other night markets that tend to be a little bit longer or start a little bit earlier. But to me, this is relatively reasonable. It is 5:35 p.m., so it's been about an hour and a half since the event started. Usually night markets don't really pick up until it gets a lot closer to sundown, which won't be until 7 p.m. or so. And I feel like peak hours tend to be 8 to 9 p.m. And then it kind of wanes around 10 to 11. So we'll see how today goes. To be honest, I don't have a lot of high hopes for this weekend, for a lot of reasons, which I'll talk about later. I think I'm just burnt out, even though I've only been doing like 1 event per month compared to last year where I had almost an event every other weekend. I think I'm just burnt out through a lot of things and I'm really tired, but we're here. So here's a quick tour of my setup. So we are given a 10 by 10 space. This isn't my first 10 by 10 actually this year. I think my first one was during ALA, which was kind of 10 by 10, but similar setup anyway. I did have my banner, so this is the banner when it's completely unraveled, because usually you'll only see a small part of it at anime conventions, especially for 8-foot tables, which only has that part. But this is the entire setup. I typically have a second banner, but I don't know where it is, to be honest, so it's fine. I do have the mirror here. I don't have the promo because I don't have space for it. Corduroy bags, magnets down here. I do have the heart bag and wallet if they want to see it up close. The promo, I'm not selling it individually this time. All the Ita bags up there. I did put the stickers here just so they're all together. And then I have the pins grouped up there and then phone grips there. I do have the shaker keychains per usual. I did include the cash policy. I also have the mystery pin bags, which I think the last time I had these was Anime Riverside, just because usually for events like these, they typically don't purchase as much items because the focus is on food, so I don't expect them to spend a lot compared to anime conventions. So I have this just in case they just wanted a few pins for a deal of 20 bucks, and I only have the one piece pin so far. I do have my catalog here for quick reference. Venmo here. On this side are all of my Ita bags. So I do have all the Ita bags up here. Lanyard. I do have space for my social media. Just put some decoration just to fill the space. And then I do have the sweaters. To be honest, I only brought 1 of each Ita bag just because, again, they don't really sell that well. Usually if I do have a sale of any of the Ita bags, it's mostly because they're from social media and they anticipated it. Because for most of my events, I would say that night markets are usually the cheapest way to get these bags, because if you add on the cost of admission, which I think for 626 it's about like $6, and then you buy an Eat a bag, that's like $106 if you don't include tax and credit card fees. Versus an anime convention, you pay about $50 to $100 and then tack on $100 for an Eat a bag. Technically, you paid $150 for an Eat a bag because including admission. So usually night markets are the cheapest way to get in. I think my next event that has a very low admission fee or is free is San Jose Made, which is in November, because I think admission is free and it's not an anime con. I think most of the anime events that I do vend at, they have admission. That's very off topic, but this is the entire setup. If you watch my night market vlogs from last year, you'll know that I've done all 3 of the 626 night market main events. So I've done the Pleasanton, Arcadia, and OC ones. And you know that I just didn't do very well. This year, because I did get to practice which events did really well for me last year and which ones did not, and just for the sake of my mental health, I did sign up for the night markets that did go well for me, or decently well, or at least can help me keep my costs very low. And so that's why technically I did choose one 626 Pleasanton event, and then I did choose this one 626 Arcadia event because it is local to me. Pretty much my main expenses are the table fee and then food, which is not a lot or not too much compared to a lot of other events like Otakon. I feel like because the music is playing in the background, I'm pretty sure this is going to get copyrighted, which I hope it doesn't. But here we are. Honestly, when it comes to this location, my expectations are very, very low, at least compared to a lot of events that I typically do. Now, why is that? First, my location compared to last year's 626 Arcadia is pretty bad. Because I did sign up for 1 out of the 4 or 5 626 Arcadia events, naturally they're not going to give me the booths that I listed, because let's say me, person A, wanted booth A, but person B also wants booth A, but they're doing multiple events. It would just make sense to have them in that same booth placement of booth A versus me getting booth A for like week 2, but the other person has that booth like weekend 1 and 3. But again, my booth location is very close to the stage. I was very far from the stage last year. And not only that, I think out of all the 626 Arcadia events, I think this is the one that has the least signups because there's literally no one next to me. And from what I remember in past events, there's always a good number of booths surrounding the booth area, but this time I'm one of the very few in this area, which is not a good thing, because at nighttime, if there's not a lot of booths, luckily I'm not super well lit in terms of my booth, which you'll see later, but it's still relatively lit. But if there's no other booth creating that sort of light, most people might not even go in this direction because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of booths. But it is what it is. You can't have a good event every single event. You know, I'm just here for the vibes and the food. I forgot my business card holder, so I typically use that 3D printed Totoro, but I don't know where he is. And I did have a business card holder to attach to the grids. I don't know where I put it, so I'm just using one of the 4x6 bins that I usually use, and then I just put it there. Honestly, with this event, I don't have any particular goals. I just want to be able to make back how much I paid and just market purposes. So basically, if I'm just able to get people to get a business card and then maybe shop later or shop at another event or convention that I do, I'd be happy. I don't have any goals for this particular event, really. So it's 7:30. It has gotten a little bit more busy. There have been a few people walking by. There were a couple more sales. And interestingly enough, at least for the first few hours of 626, I've noticed that most of the sales tend to be with a lot of my original designs rather than anime sticker designs. Usually for events like these, most of my sales are with smaller items like stickers, pins, and that's usually because for a night market, people don't come here to shop, they come here for the food. And usually with stickers and pins, they can just put it in their bag versus an Eat a bag. Luckily, I do have tote bags that they can bring with them, but usually they would have to consider how would they carry that around. So luckily I do have tote bags with that. It is 8:20 and honestly, again, my expectations were really low. So I'm not surprised that it is relatively slow right now. It could be that a lot of people are eating at this time because it's 8 p.m. and usually the peak kind of goes from 8 to 9 p.m. However, I was even talking to another vendor friend and she said that it's pretty slow as of now. Honestly, again, I think I mentioned this before. My goal this weekend is really just to promote the business marketing wise. There has been sales, but it's not that frequent. I'm not mad. I think because of the low expectations, I'm not surprised that it's not super busy. It is 8:37. Also, my wallpaper is Otani Shohei, so this is typically when it's a little bit of the peak period for 626 night market from my experience. It's slow. I'm not mad because I kind of expected it. I don't think I'm halfway into even breaking even yet on this table fee, but to be fair, the table fee is very expensive. I will say though, even though obviously sales haven't been so great, it has been really nice because at least the customers that I have spoken with have all been very kind, and it's been really helpful having the pins not included sign on the Ita bags, just because I remember from last year I didn't have that on the Ita bags. And a lot of people assume that the pins were included with the Ita bags because they are priced higher than what they would expect for an Ita bag, or at least that disappointment upon hearing that the pins do not come with it, even though if you add up the amount of pins, they're going to be more expensive than the bag. It definitely affected my own self-confidence. I fully believe that the price of those bags are actually what it's priced at, and I don't really feel that until I'm at an anime convention where people are willing and don't even question the price of the bag. So it's a little bit on that type of difference of expectations. And of course, I don't expect people who attend night markets whose primary purpose is to go buy food. And even though you could argue some of the food items are pretty expensive, like let's say $30 for some type of lobster food item, people are willing to spend that much for that food item, but they might not be willing to spend $30 on an interactive enamel pin. And I can't blame them for that. Versus an anime convention, people do attend those to actually buy from these small businesses and small artists. But it's just something to think about. Hello, it is day 2 of 626 Night Market Arcadia. I actually arrived a couple hours early because when I was looking at yesterday's footage, also I don't know the level of degree of how dramatic I was last night, but looking at yesterday's numbers, it was actually not that bad. I would say that we hit a couple $100 below the typical baseline that I would prefer to receive in a day. However, I'm not mad about that because I was expecting pretty low numbers for this weekend. Like really my goal was to just break even and then profit a little bit, but it was actually better than I thought. So very happy about that. I also have to say, I don't know if I brought this up yesterday, but I feel like my customer experience or attendee experience was actually a lot better than I expected. I think it's because I wasn't at 626 Night Market very frequently, so then people who do expect me or usually see me at 626 Night Market, they don't have as many opportunities to see me at another night market because this is the only one I'm doing this year. Versus last year for this particular location, I think I was at 4 or 5 626 Night Market Arcadias. So of course you have more opportunities to think about whether you want that pin or not. But in this case, because this is the only one I'm doing, I think most people who usually see me decided to purchase now. Also, I realized looking in the footage and probably even for today, my hair is kind of a mess. I think it's because it's hot and it's just, I don't care anymore. I don't know where the burnout's coming from, to be honest. I will say that this particular event, I debuted my new wagon, which I got from Amazon Prime Day, because I was thinking about it, because I've had this other wagon that you've seen in other vlogs since when I first started, and it's still perfectly fine. I just realized that for a lot of the events that I do, it helps to have a second wagon, since most of the time I do have someone with me. So this time I did want one that has a tailgate, so then if I have my canopy or if I have my tables, I don't have to worry about it fitting within the confines of the wagon, but this time it can peek out, and as long as it's balanced within the front part of the wagon, I'm not worried about the back. And it's honestly been really helpful, especially for me who's soloing this weekend. I didn't have to wheel my canopy, even though that one has wheels, but it's kind of hard wheeling it because it's pretty heavy. but on the wagon, it's been fantastic. I will say that it's a little bit more narrow than my previous wagon though, but it is also helpful because sometimes I do have to go in between cars that are parked. I don't think I would have fit it with the black wagon because it is wider, but with the orange new wagon, because it is a lot more narrow, I don't really have to worry it scratching the cars that I pass. Also, just some little tidbit of details for this event that I don't think you would have thought of. If you're in sections A and B, furthermost from the food area, I don't recommend wearing shoes that are really nice or shoes where you don't care how the soles are gonna look. The ground has some kind of red floor material, ground material. I don't know the name for that term. It will rub off on your shoes, which is why I bought new shoes last week. As much as I would love to wear them, I didn't wear them this weekend because I know it's gonna get dirty. The red is gonna go on my shoes and I'm gonna be really annoyed with that. Also, if you've noticed, I did partially open the canopy walls, even though I typically leave that down. But because it is really warm and I don't want this to become a type of sauna, I like to keep the canopy walls partially closed when the shop is closed. But because I do need some breeze coming in, I do open it halfway so then the wind can come in, but I also have some sense of privacy. Maybe I brought this up yesterday. I've also noticed that, at least in terms of sales, which I'm really happy about, a lot more people are gravitating towards my original work. There's been a few people who have purchased my cat pin or my bunny pin or the bear pin, and even with sticker sales, a lot of them have been purchasing the corporate stickers. So a lot of those have been doing decently well compared to my usual bestsellers, which are the anime stickers. Because this crowd draws a more general audience rather than anime specific, a lot of people are gravitating towards original work, especially when it's kawaii. I think those tend to be pretty helpful. Also, even though I'm not necessarily expecting anime convention level sales at this event, and since I did break even, I'm pretty happy about that, and since there's 2 more days profit on that end, my goal for this particular event is to get more content with outdoor events because this is the only outdoor event that I have this year. If I need to make some videos talking about outdoor events from now until next year, I can get that content now. Number 2, I really just want to market my business, spread the word even if they're not necessarily buying something, because the attendees who might go to this event are more likely going to Anime Pasadena or Anime Expo Chibi, which I will be at in November, because they are within driving distance from each other. We're currently in Arcadia. Pasadena is about 20 minutes away, and then Anime Expo Chibi is in Ontario. Ontario is about 30 minutes from here, so a lot of intersecting attendees. So if they are interested in what I have to sell, if they don't want to buy right now, they can at least think about it for the next couple months, and then when they decide to buy something, I'll be there. Also, I forgot to wear a headband yesterday, so this time I realized I need to wear one. So I chose Winnie the Pooh because I feel like he kind of is within the Venn diagram of anime because he's cute, and then general because Disney. And I usually like to wear my anime specific headbands for anime conventions, and then for more general events like this one, I kind of wear my Disney Sanrio headbands. So this time I thought I'd wear him because he's super cute. Also, after thinking about it, the low expectations for this event is also just stemming from my dislike for hot outdoor events. Obviously, this has nothing to do with 626 Night Market and everything to do with me. I feel like I would perform better at this type of event if my display was configured better for this type of event. And I say that because I do have a lot of artist friends who vend at this type of event as well as anime conventions, and I feel like I haven't asked them which one they do better in, but I'm sure they do really well enough here that they're doing this event multiple times, especially throughout the year. And I say that because the way my display is, it's very much like something you would see at a convention or an artist alley. But I think if I were to set up this display that would better suit a night market or a general type of event, I would probably make it more self-serve, so then people would come in to the booth rather than having everything displayed like here and then they're kind of on the outskirts of it. But again, I'm just not particularly interested in doing that, and that's mostly because I don't really do these events that frequently, and when I do anime conventions, I'm usually confined within a 6-foot or an 8-foot table if I'm lucky. And obviously the way I do everything, I don't really see myself doing self-serve in that aspect. And personally, I don't want to put in a lot of thought into changing up how I do my display from different events, and as someone who does get overwhelmed really easily, I just need to streamline everything. And so all of that is stemming from me and my need to change it, but I just don't feel like it because I'm not doing this type of event that frequently. Also, I've noticed a difference with having appropriate lighting. My booth display isn't the most bright if you compare it to other table displays, but I've noticed that there's a lot of booths at this event that just don't adequately light up their display, because when you're walking around 626 Night Market, they don't really light up the area because the whole point of it is to emulate a night market scene, and there's not a lot of light except from the light that comes from each booth. And if your merch booth does not have enough light, people can easily walk past you and not even notice you because the booth next to you is well lit. So for this particular event, you do need to have a well lit display. It doesn't have to be expensive. If you can at least get some camping lights and just put it on the corners of your display so there's a good amount of light. But if you're just going to use string lights, I personally don't think that's enough. I think you need to have some kind of camping lights. And even if you can just have the camping lights and not have these outdoor string lights, I think you'll be fine. But if you are going to do outdoor events like this and they do go until dark or night, you do need to consider those type of lights. Also, to keep cool at outdoor events, I do have a fan. I'm not wearing it right now just because it might interfere with the audio of the microphone, but I usually have a neck fan and it usually lasts me throughout the entire day, and I kind of turn it off once it's a lot cooler just to preserve battery just in case. So you might be wondering, how do I adapt my artist alley table, artist alley display into a 10 by 10 space, especially with an outdoor setting like this? Obviously, I do have a canopy. I wouldn't say that this is the most easy to set up by yourself, especially if you don't have a lot of strength. I did struggle a little bit just to set it up by myself, but it's possible. There are ones that are a little bit more simple and easier to use, especially if you're soloing. I just like this one because it is a little bit more sturdy. While I don't necessarily do a lot of outdoor events in OC or like 626 Night Market OC, the Santa Ana winds are no joke. I've had artist friends who were vending at outdoor events in OC, and even with weights on their tent, it did fly away. And obviously if you have a less than sturdy canopy, it's going to break, and I didn't really want to risk that. So I did invest in a canopy that's a little bit more stable, sturdy, so to say, and I'm really happy about it. It's just big. I do put my banner on the canopy as I showed earlier. This banner is 10 by 1, and I am able to fold it so that I can also put it on my artist alley display. I don't put it on my 6-foot display just because there's no room for it, but there is room on an 8-foot display where I can fold it so then it just shows the Mualcaina part. And also because I do have 2 6-foot tables, I form an L within my canopy, so then the front part becomes an 8-foot table and then the other side is 6 feet. I think in my case, before I was able to just fit 3 grid cubes high for my display, but just because I have so many more Ita bags, now my display is basically 4 grid cubes high, and it still fits within the confines of the canopy, luckily, because I think this particular canopy is a bit taller. Other canopies that I've used, like for Foodieland, I think it's a little bit lower, so then you can't see the 4th grid cube. But with this particular canopy, because it is taller, you can see the entire 4 grid cubes tall display even from afar. I also am a little bit more considerate with how I display items. So, and even the items that I do bring for these type of events, sometimes for conventions I do bring B grade bags, and if you've visited my table, you would know that for my B grade bags, you are able to look through the entire bag prior to purchase. However, I would most likely not bring B grade bags at these events, mostly because this is a food event. Most people eat, probably with their hands. I don't know if they've washed their hands or how clean their hands are, and I don't want people touching the bag if I don't know how clean their hands are. So I would just much rather not bring B grade bags at all, which has been fine really, and I don't think people come here to buy a B grade bag anyway, but it is a precaution that I take. What else? I'll also say that because I am near the stage, I was a little bit worried that my hearing would be affected, because I do have other vendor friends who have been placed near the stage in the past, and one of them even said that they basically got migraines because of how loud the stage was. And I did bring my loop earbuds, which I usually wear at concerts, but I ended up not using them last night because it didn't feel like it was too loud, and I was worried that this morning I would wake up with ringing in my ears. That did not happen. So I feel like for this weekend, the audio from the stage was pretty manageable, especially with me being so close. Because I think from last year, there were times where it was really loud, and even from where I was in the past and it was like a few rows back, it was still really loud, but this time it wasn't too bad. So that's good. Hopefully it's the same for today. Hello, it is day 3 of 626 Night Market Arcadia, and looking at yesterday's numbers, it's okay. Typically for any event, and it's not specific to night markets, this can also apply to conventions. Usually there's big differences between each day. I would say maybe there's like a couple thousand in difference. However, for 626 Night Market Arcadia, or at least this weekend in particular, it's actually about the same. I think the only difference is probably like $50 between yesterday and then the day before, which is kind of nuts. I know that was also the case for Anime Expo, where it was pretty similar as well, numbers-wise each day. The only difference was maybe $100 or so, because most of the time there's a much bigger difference between Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Depending on Sunday hours, if the event ends early, usually Sunday kind of takes a bit of a dip, but for AX, every day was relatively similar, and it seems to be the same here as well. Obviously not AX numbers, but it did feel a little bit more busy on Saturday, and that it kind of felt like there was more people walking around. I didn't really get a chance to step outside my booth, but it did feel like there were more people passing through. A lot of people from the past couple days were actually people that have seen me at Anime Expo, and they were also glad to see me here because some of them didn't really get a chance to buy from me during AX, because if you've been to AX, it's very hectic, and if you also saw my vlog, we pretty much had a crowd almost every hour of the day, so it was another opportunity for them to shop for me here because it's not as hectic. I do feel a little bad because if you follow me on social media, you know that I am very, very, very low stock on the Black Ida backpacks, and I think for my online shop update, I only had about 6 available, and I did say that for 626 Night Market weekend, I'd only bring 1, and then for SAC Anime next weekend, I think I'll have about 2 or so. There's like a couple more I need to grade, but I would promise 2 for next weekend. One person did ask me about it yesterday. However, someone already bought it on Friday. So again, I am out for this weekend. Because when I did order the backpacks from my manufacturer, I think for the black gold, I ordered about 125. And then for the black with silver hardware, it was 100 pieces. And I usually order about that amount because I can't really afford to order more because it is pretty expensive, and you do have to order the minimum order quantity, or the MOQ, but I also just didn't anticipate them to sell out that quickly, so thank you. I do feel bad though. I wish I could order more, but it is pretty expensive. I will have pre-orders soon. I say September, October, but I'm aiming for more so early October, and then those pre-orders will hopefully arrive in around May, June of next year. It is pretty late in the year, but it does take time to produce those bags because I do order a lot, and a lot as in a lot of different colors, and of course that will take time, I think, compared to other people who order other Ida bags, but there's not as many color variations. I am also working on another type of Ida bag. I won't share what it is yet. You can probably guess if you follow me on my personal Instagram. I don't know, maybe you can guess, but it's different from the other Ida bags that I've been designing, just for a little bit of a change. Some info about 626 Night Market Arcadia if you are interested in vending. There's 3 different locations. There's Arcadia, which is this one, and it's also the main one. There's Pleasanton up in NorCal, and OC, Orange County. They have other locations besides those 3, except those are more so the mini events, like their Santa Monica one, Las Vegas. I don't know if they're still doing Santa Monica actually, but they have mini versions, which are I think like 2-day events, and it's a lot smaller versus these 3 main ones. From my experience, my best one is Pleasanton, and then Arcadia and OC. But sometimes it kind of changes. Sometimes Arcadia is better, sometimes OC is better, but those fluctuate between the 2, but Pleasanton was my best one. I don't know too much about the food booths because obviously I'm not a food booth, but there are merch booths, and merch booths this year are $900, which is my most expensive table fee for the entire year, at least compared to other events. But it also kind of makes sense because it is a 10 by 10 space. Last year it was $850, and basically again, As I said before, it comes with a 10 by 10 space. They used to offer a canopy, but since last year they stopped doing that. But they do offer canopies for the food vendors. You're not allowed to split a booth space, which is unfortunate because, again, the table fee is really expensive. It does require event insurance, and you do have to provide proof of that prior to you vending at the event. They also provide electricity. I don't remember the amount of electricity, but if you're a regular merch vendor and you just need the basic lighting setup, it's fine. And then I also have like an extension cord with 2 other outlets, so then besides using it for the lights, I can also charge my phone or whatever electronics that I have. Because this is just a 10 by 10 space, it is literally just a space. They just provide the location for you to vend at, so you have to bring everything yourself. That means tables, canopy, lighting, display, your own internet for conducting card payments, chairs, canopy weights, all that good stuff. Again, when it comes to table fee, $900 is really expensive. I remember when 626 Night Market Arcadia used to be around $700, and I think this was back in 2022. I also feel like there's a lot less vendors who are willing to participate at this type of event. I remember there used to be a wait list for 626 Night Market Arcadia because it was the most sought after and busy event of the 3, and I think this was back in 2022, but now it feels like you can easily get in, or there's usually vendors that are next to me, but this year I'm like soloing the space, and this can fit, I think, about like 3 or 4 more vendors to my left. Now that begs the question, would I do 626 Night Market Arcadia again? Maybe. To me, Arcadia is convenient in that it is one of my few local events, in that I can just commute from home. I have family nearby, so if I do need their help or if I do want them to just stop by, they can come by. Plus, my main expenses are really just the vendor space and then food. It is rough because, as I've mentioned in a lot of my other vlogs, it's very difficult to get into conventions now, so my event options are pretty limited, and even with this particular event, I only signed up for 1 Arcadia and 1 Pleasanton location, and that was because apps for 626 came out much earlier than other conventions, and so I also didn't want to risk not having an event. What month is it? For August. But at the time, I didn't know I would get into Otakon or SAC Anime, so it's kind of that frustrating guessing game of, am I going to get into these conventions next year, or should I just get a booth here and then hope that I might get a spot at an anime convention, where I tend to do a lot better. Now forget what I'm thinking, should you do 626 Arcadia? Because as I should keep preaching in my videos, you should take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because my experience might not reflect your experience, as with your experience might not reflect my experience. If you have kawaii mainstream items that appeal to a general audience and are very local and can keep costs very low besides the table fee, I think it's worth giving a try. However, if you're just starting an event, let's say this is your first year, your startup costs are going to be very high because you'd have to buy a canopy, lights, tables, your display on top of the table fee. It'll be expensive in the get-go. Plus, if you have very specific items that only appeal to very specific people, let's say you do have anime items, usually if you have Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, One Piece, like the mainstream ones, you should be okay. But if it's specific, as in like on High School Host Club and so on, maybe this might not be the event for you. Or if you have to fly, don't fly for this event. And if you're not good with hot weather, I got lucky in that it's only in the 80s this weekend. However, last month in July, it could easily be in the high 90s to low hundreds. So very, very warm. If you can't deal with hot weather, if you can't be under the sun, even if you do have a canopy, I don't recommend this event for you. Or even if you don't have the equipment, even if you're not able to borrow equipment from someone else, let's say you know someone who has a canopy and tables and whatnot, I don't recommend this event. It is a lot to think about. I feel like if I didn't have my other big cons like Otakon or SAC Anime, I don't know if I just would not be complaining as much, because it's better to have an event versus not having one. But I think for next year's circumstances, I will have to think about if I want to do this event again. And luckily, everyone's been really kind this weekend. I'm not great with hot weather, so that's just something I have to think about. So it's currently 7:38. It is starting to pick up later in the day. Compared to last year, most of the sales actually happen much later in the day, I would say from like 8 to almost 11, because there were a lot of last minute sales the past couple days, which I'm a little bit surprised by. We did sell another Ita backpack. However, I think they are from social media because they were prepared with cash, and I don't think you would bring that much cash to buy an Ita bag if you didn't anticipate it, to be honest. So if you did come by, thank you for stopping by and saying hello and saying that you're from social media or that you watch the vlogs. And it's funny because with this type of event, there are a lot of children, and it's super cute because usually I notice that a lot of parents allot one item for children to purchase if they want to buy something at this event. And usually I feel the most pride when they can only buy one item in the entirety of 626 and then they choose to buy a sticker from my booth, because I feel like children tend to be really picky with what they want. If they dedicate their one item with you, it's very heartwarming. But then again, my expectations were pretty low with this event, but it's been relatively decent with the low expectations, since my bread and butter tends to be anime conventions, and I think with my type of products and my audience, night markets and this night market in particular is a good filler event. Now, artist alleys may seem a little bit less complicated when compared to food markets. However, it can be its own type of beast. Watch this video to see what it's like flying across the country to vend at an anime convention. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!